In the last night sky replacement tutorial, we used a combination of an Avid paint effect with the Chroma Key Studio to actually create the mask on V2. I'm going to show you a different technique where we actually use the BCC Make Alpha. It's a little bit more efficient and you get actually a bit of a better result. So first we're going to start with the three video tracks, and we'll generate our star field and our Luna effect using Sapphire's builder. Brighten up the stars. Make them a little easier to see. Then we'll add the Luna, and we'll go for that moon with ring effect again. Move that up to the right, top right corner. Okay, now we're not going to put the match move on yet because we're going to jump over to V2 and we're going to add the BCC10's Make Alpha. And Make Alpha actually has a built-in Mocha tracker. So we can use it for both the garbage mask and Mocha tracking all in one shot. And I found, after I made the first tutorial, I found that this gives a much nicer result. So we're going to base this on the blue color, and then we're going to have to play with the black levels. We'll make sure that we actually show the mask. And you can see initially it's not particularly isolating, but as we actually raise the black level, we can. What we're trying to do is make the sky portion the white portion of the mask and everything else blacked out. We can play around with the black level a little bit. Drive it up, the whites, leave it up as high as possible actually in this case. And then we can drop the gamma, and you can see we're darkening the mask a little bit more. And we're still going to have to fight with the railing in the foreground. There's no way to get rid of that by playing with these levels. So we're going to jump into Mocha and create basically a X-spline around the area that is the sky. And we'll, while we're in there, we'll actually track that. So let's jump down to the built-in Mocha. We'll turn on the use of Mocha and then jump right into it. Ah, yes. Well, to get the best tracking, you need to go with green on the Avid timeline. So now we'll jump into Mocha and we'll zoom out a little bit here, because we're going to create a spline that actually goes out of frame. Not unlike the spline that we created with the paint effect in the previous tutorial. I'll leave a link to that tutorial in the comments section. So we just create a spline around here. Basically what we want to do is isolate this as the only portion of the image that we want to consider as part of the transparent part of the mask. And because we're tracking the same bridge, we can use this to actually save off this motion tracking data to move the star field along with the horizon, just as we did before. But this is fantastic because we don't have to actually use the external Mocha Pro. We can use Mocha that's built right into BCC. So you kill two birds with one stone here. So this is great. So let's export the same BCC center point XY tracking data. We'll save that off to a file. And again, we'll close Mocha and we'll save this to the timeline. Just save that into the clip effect in case we have to go back and finesse the tracking. But I don't think we will. And you notice immediately that the railings disappeared. So if we turn off the use of Mocha spline, you can see there's the railing. But with the Mocha spline in place, it basically isolates just the sort of top portion where the sky is as consideration. So this is a pretty good mask here, actually. Plus we've got the tracking data, so we can go back now and add the match move to V1 so that we move the stars and the moon, of course, in concert with the camera motion, just as we did in the previous tutorial. So let's alt drag that onto V1. Into the motion tracker and load that XY file. I'll have to find where we put it. Here we are. Alright, and then we'll manipulate the XY offsets here to move the foreground placeholder to the center. If we didn't do this, when we shift over to using this, the actual filter track, as I'll show you down here, when we switch over to the filter track, if we hadn't moved the foreground image placeholder to the center, then the whole image would have shifted up and to the right. So this keeps the image as centered as possible, given that it's going to be moving around a little bit. Okay, and you can see that, as before, we've got the image just shifting back and forth in concert with the camera motion. Alright, so this is pretty great. Now we can add a sapphire builder effect to V3, and we're going to use the first layer below as the mask layer and the second layer below as the background, just as before. So we've got our mask and our background, and we're going to composite those together inside the builder effect. So we're going to put a mat up on the mask, and we're going to get a little bit more sophisticated this time. Switch over to the Luma channel. We don't have to invert this mask. It came in already inverse to the way it did when we used Chroma Key Studio in the previous tutorial. Now we're going to expand outwards the mask a little bit, and what this does is it removes some of the light color that was on the bridge. Essentially it was the brightness of the sky reflecting off the bridge itself and some of the surrounding areas. So we can basically expand it outwards and then soften it ever so slightly. This will give us a better effect. So now we'll drive the cutout with the mask added to the background, and you can see that the star field poking through now. And as before, we'll then add a composite, and we'll place the source into the background of the composite filter, and then the output from the cutout into the foreground. And you can see actually already when you look around the bridge that it doesn't have that odd glow that that it had in the previous tutorial, and that's because we've expanded the mask slightly. Now we'll use the bleach bypass effect on the source footage to get that day to night look. Now, something that we didn't do last time, which I'm going to experiment with here, is maybe add a little cloud effect into the star field as well as into the foreground image. And the nice thing about the cloud effect, you can play around with it, change the direction. It actually animates as part of Sapphire. And I'll pick one of the presets. I think this This is taken from the Hounds of the Baskervilles movie. Make sure you set it to screen so that it blends nicely. And if we play this back inside Builder, we'll drop the brightness a bit. It's a bit too much. But if we play it back inside Builder, you can see it actually drifting, which kind of gives you an interesting effect there. And I'm going to put a cloud effect as well over top of the bleach bypass. Actually, it could have gone behind the bleach bypass as well, but this will work nicely. And I'll load the same preset, but we're going to actually change the speed of that preset so that the foreground mist isn't moving quite as fast. Remember to switch over to screen mode again, the blending mode. And that's probably, well, that's probably not quite bright enough, so we'll slow down the X speed shifting so that the foreground mist moves very, very slowly. Let's bring up that brightness a little bit more, just so we can see the mist just a little bit. Okay, and then we can just click OK to this and see the entire composite. Now you remember last time we can go back into the, on V1, go back into the S effect, into the Luna X and Y and move the moon around. But as we saw before, the tracking of the moon and the stars is glued so closely to the bridge that it looks a little bit artificial. You don't get any parallax effects. So before we're going to jump one step and actually go directly to the match move. And we just basically zoomed in to 130% on the transform so that it introduces a slightly loose coupling between the tracking of the star field and the foreground image. And we'll go ahead here and we'll speed this up again, but for the sake of the tutorial, we'll speed up the rendering process. But let's take a look now at what we've got. I think it looks more realistic, and it's actually this effect was completed in fewer steps than in the first tutorial. So that looks pretty good. I might actually drop the intensity of that forward mist. But let's take a look, zoom it in, and you can see the moon moving slightly. There's a slight parallax effect as the camera motion moves, which I think sells this a little bit better. You can see the mist in the background moving a little bit faster than the mist in the foreground. Yeah, much better illumination of the bridge. Very cool. Okay, so that was another variation on the sky replacement technique where we used the BCC Make Alpha to create our matte input for the builder, and we're able to use its built-in Mocha tracker to provide that tracking data for the background. Thanks for watching. See you next time.